are many kinds of relationships. There are relationships that you will have with friends. There are relationships that you will have with family members. There are extended family members. There are acquaintances, and there are lovers. There are children, and there are parents. And so there is a full range of types of relationships that all of you experience here in some paradigm. That being said, then it is important to understand, as creators of your own realities, the impact of your own perspective, of your own thoughts and your own beliefs about each of these kinds of relationships, the impact that they have on the experiences that you are able to translate through your five senses, the ability to understand first healthy relationship is, and two, how a healthy relationship begins primarily and predominantly with your own vibration, that your own emotions, which are generated from your thoughts and your belief systems. And so today we are going to walk through the important dynamics to remember. For all of you have come forth into your bodies, into families that you knew in advance were going to impart upon you their own belief structures, which they received from their families, their teachers, their friends, their lovers, their clergy, and the cycle continues and is handed down generation to generation, for the most part, in terms that you can understand. It is important to understand, though, that we will be referring to these learned conditional beliefs, these limiting beliefs, that for the most part, the intention was honorable, for they were imparted to you at ages when you were unable to formulate your own belief structures, but also they were imparted with the intention of you being the beneficiary of its wisdom. You understood then at some point that you were going to have a choice, a decision point, where you were going to be able to choose whether or not you would continue to believe in these limiting thoughts that you were taught by many growing up. And not only were you taught, but because they became your belief structures, as you grew older, you actually manifested the affirming events and rendezvous that gave credibility to the belief systems that you were taught at an early age. And so it takes a force of will to make a decision to consciously disregard the limiting beliefs that do not serve the reality and the desires that you're trying to manifest, because it means effectively you are making a decision to, for lack of a better term, turn your back on all that you know and all that you have learned. For many, this is a very difficult step in their evolutionary process, because their identity have formed through the integration of the belief structures that you have held for the majority of your lives. Many of you have been on an awakening journey where you are beginning to consciously make decisions to believe new truths that are more in harmony with the authenticity of the power of your connection to all that is. You refer, some of you, as source energy. I do not prefer, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, I do not prefer to use the word God, because it has been aberrated. The description of the entity has been distorted to mean something entirely different, meaning you are connected to the energy of all that is, and indeed through this energy also connected to each other. This energy that flows to you and through you at all times that you cannot disconnect from is referred to as the energy of unconditional love, which is the most powerful energy resonance in all of the known universes. Indeed, it is the energy that is responsible for the creation of all that is, all that you know of, and all that you are not consciously aware of in this dimension, in your realities. And so, though you have been raised with the moral beliefs of right and wrong, good and bad, good and evil, it is nonetheless the truth that the power and the energy of creation, which flows to you and through you at all times, is indeed the most powerful energy in existence. Though you have been taught to believe that other things are more powerful, that other things are more important for you to focus your thoughts on in your present moments, those beliefs cause you to ruminate unnecessarily regarding past relationships, past events, past conversations that no longer hold any power in your reality, except for the fact that you continue to give it that power by focusing your thoughts on it. Understand then that since the energy is unconditional in its framework, it means just that. When I say you cannot disconnect from it and it is unconditional, it means that there was no wrong turn that you ever made. There was no wrong relationship that you ever had. Indeed, every experience that you have experienced has served you and served your evolution. Each one provided an opportunity and continues to provide opportunities for you to evaluate them through the perspective of your source energy, which is unconditional love. And what does that mean, unconditional love? It means interacting with each other here in this physical dimension from the viewpoint that you will interact and view each other unconditionally, meaning without conditions, meaning the same authority and power that you are afforded from all that is, that you would extend that as well to each other in your interactions. And you will recall briefly now the times when you've interacted in your various relationships at their varying levels and degrees of significance in your life. You will recall certain times when people in those relationships with you behaved in a way that was displeasing to you. Perhaps they said things that also were displeasing to you. And of course, as you were conditioned to do, you began to form opinions about each other, about them, when you observed these behaviors and these words that you disapproved of. And you began to form opinions on the persons that were offering these opportunities of observation. You formed judgments based on a morality code of right and wrong and good and bad that was based on your perspective of how relationships should be conducted, what relationships are proper and which relationships are not, which relationships are acceptable and when to engage in physical intimacies and when it is not. And so this can become, within the framework of the limiting beliefs that you have been raised with, and they have been there so long that for the most part, many of you will not be aware of what these beliefs are without a purposeful examination, which can be initiated when a feeling of displeasure or a feeling of annoyance or a feeling of anger is triggered by another person that you are in a relationship with. And so then it is important to understand first that your stability, your vibrational stability, is going to be the defining factor for you on what kinds of relationships you are going to attract. How are you going to be able to utilize, be the beneficiary of these relationships to serve your expansion and evolution, which you all came here to do? Indeed, a relationship is one of the most significant ways that you learn. And so it is important then that if it is the number one way that you learn and evolve, to understand that it is important to view it from the proper perspective, that being the perspective that is most in harmony with the source energy that is you, and to begin to deconstruct the limiting beliefs that disallow you, that impede your ability to do so. You see, we are going to answer the questions today from that viewpoint of unconditionalism, so that I can assist you in identifying what your limiting beliefs are and the choices of how you can pivot your perspective, which is going to completely change the nature of the dynamic of how you interact in relationships. And your changed perspective then and ability to participate in these relationships are also going to provide the people that you are engaging in those relationships with opportunities to grow themselves. 4, there is a behavior that is common amongst most relationships, and it is this: most of you aver you are not as forthcoming with saying the things that you authentically think and with taking actions that are in line with the movements of your evolution. And you often do not do this because you concern yourself predominantly with the thoughts and reactions of others. And it will be important to say that when you came forth into this body, before you came forth into this physical reality, I assure you, the very last thing that you were concerned with is what others would think of the reality that you were creatively expressing in physical form. You were more concerned with how you wanted to creatively express your energy, your evolution here in physical form. Also, you were not concerned with how others who were coming forth into their bodies, how they would creatively express their realities. But then you all came forth and were taught that conditionally your behaviors and your thinking had to meet the approval level of other beings who were also separated from themselves, meaning they did not possess a conscious understanding of the totality of who and what they really are, which is much, much more than who they think they are in these bodies. If you can understand then that this is the framework that you are attempting to evolve out of, then you will be better able to receive the information and the answers to your questions from this viewpoint.